Hello everybody, I'm SimmingInOz and today we are making the Millennium Falcon. This build was definitely very experimental for me because I decided to be a bit brave and really embrace the tool mod that I downloaded recently for all of my builds. If you've watched any of my previous Star Wars videos, you know that I am absolutely raving about the tool mod. It really gave me the flexibility to do the Millennium Falcon hangar bay as custom as I really wanted, and honestly it just really came down to the live edit objects that The Sims 4 gave us for the Star Wars pack. And then I really just went really ambitious with what I wanted to achieve. I wasn't even sure I was going to make the Millennium Falcon because how do you do this? Like, you have the exterior ship which you get from the Journey to Batuu pack, which is really great, and I do use this in that build. But then I thought I am definitely a perfectionist, and I really wanted to give people who download this particular save file the ability to be as story focused as I wanted. And a lot of the movies and content surrounding Star Wars actually just takes place within the Millennium Falcon, so I really couldn't just not do it. And I really wanted a challenge in that it's a full interior build of something that's got a lot of curves and a lot of circles, and it really was a pain in the ass. But I really liked how it turned out, and I'm glad I challenged myself. So what we started out with is that we're making a hangar bay. So we needed somewhere where the Millennium Falcon could hang out and have it be, accurate. So I basically went where we meet the Millennium Falcon and Han Solo. So I like to think that this is a Tatooine outpost kind of thing. And in the surrounding neighborhoods, which I felt was really important, you have Ben Solo, you have, no, not Ben Solo, oh my god, Obi-Wan Kenobi, yeah, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke Skywalker, and Rey, and you've got all the characters and everything. So I like to think this is the outskirts of the Tatooine part of the neighborhood. In that vein, I decided to do a really cool hangar bay that has the Millennium Falcon in it. I like to think if there was a story connected to this, that Han and Chewie are just on a layover somewhere, they're fueling up, they're getting supplies, and sort of just popping it somewhere where it's not going to be like truly in the way. But I really liked how it turned out, because obviously we're going forth with, it's a basement level, so I took it down 2 basement levels, and then I put in this absolutely glorious curved structure that we get in the live edit objects. And this structure is probably one of my favorite things in the whole pack because it just looks so cool. And I wasn't even sure I was going to be able to get people down into it. It was a lot of Jesus take the wheel, trust the process kind of thing. And this is basically where I started to really get experimental with the tool mods. So I was popping down shell buildings and I was building up the world around it. And in that vein, I'm popping down buildings to bracket the hangar bay, just to make it look really built in, like there is a city surrounding this lot that extends past the barriers of the lot. And I wanted it to be absolutely seamless. Like, I wanted to build the buildings into the scenery. I wanted new trees. I wanted power poles in place of power lines. So as you can see, I've actually gone through and I've put like moisture farmer poles over the power poles in the street just to really build it up as a Star Wars neighborhood. Definitely my favorite build of this suburb because it really brings it together and blends in the scenery of, I've taken it from Oasis Springs to a Star Wars world, and it just blends beautifully, and I love it. I love it so much. It took forever though, like using the tool mod and learning that new skill was really tricky, especially just because you have to go on like XY axis kind of thing, and I'm not good with that. It was a lot of back and forth, trial and error, and I feel like I am actually getting pretty good at it by now because I've done a few builds of the tool mod now under my belt, and it's starting to become a little bit intuitive. But that learning process, which was mostly through this video and this build, was really slow. So you will see in this video, I do speed up the video whenever I am placing down a building, because to you, what is about 5 seconds of placing down the building, to me was about 15 minutes. So I really did have to speed it up and cut a lot out, but you're not missing anything. You're just missing me absolutely pulling my hair out. But what we're doing right now is we're adding in the greenery. I was very select in adding in fauna and greenery around the world, just because Star Wars is very different in that they don't have a lot of greenery, especially the Tatooine regions. They would have, at best, I'd say, shrubs and some cactus, but not like our cactus. They'd have like alien cactus. So I was really, really disciplined in what I put down in terms of greenery. I wanted it to still look natural, but it still had to look like an alien world, like a Star Wars world, and that was super important to me. So it's all about the vibes. So I'm going through and I'm just adding in anything. I'm chucking everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, and thankfully it all just sticks. I was very fortunate in that the Sims can actually step over this circular structure. As you can see, I do have a play with it in a little bit, and I add in a pathway for them to actually step onto and actually go down into the hangar bay. And I had no idea if this was going to work, so it was all a very relieving process. As for the surrounding buildings, some of them are functional, some of them are not. There is a building in the background that I pop in a little bit later. It is a food stall, so you can go up to this building, you can go inside it, and a pop-up will appear where your sim can actually buy food. I really like that idea because it's a little bit of world building, where if your sim that you're playing, if you want to have a go at it, if they visit this area, then they can come and get something to eat. It's built in. It's not just the Millennium Falcon, it's the Millennium Falcon and the neighborhood surrounding it. So that's very important to me. I wanted it to be very authentic. So this is just me having a little bit of a play test, and yes, it worked out. I really like how I've been able to stick to the theme though. It's all so beige. And it's so Tatooine, and it's recognizable as being Tatooine, so that was really, really great. And by this point, I was so chuffed. I was just wanting to expand the world and really just going crazy with the tool mod. So I did put some effort into actually building up the areas around it. I, of course, covered anything with rocks that I could. I pop in some speeders that don't actually belong to Han or Chewie. I just basically pop them on the road. And this is just me creating a little bit of a surrounding barrier of rocks around the hangar bay, because as you can see, Luke Skywalker lives literally next door, and that's not really canon. Luke Skywalker is meant to live out in the vast wastelands of the desert, so I really wanted to put up like a big rock wall. And if I could explain my process, I would think that within the canon of this save file, this is the outskirts of Tatooine that I'm building right now. There's a hangar bay, there's sort of like a little city, I suppose, that they go to, and being a moisture farmer, they would have to have somewhere to take all their moisture and drop it off as, because they have to sell it, and that's how they make their living. So I like to think that this is an outskirts city of Tatooine, where it's got a few buildings that are official. It's nothing as big as what Tatooine proper, like the city itself, is going to be off in another suburb, but it is a little bit of a stopover, which I think was appropriate because this is just basically where you come to hide. You want to mind your own business. Obi-Wan Kenobi definitely isn't looking for friends to play cards with on the weekend. He's just out here looking after Luke and doing his loner thing. So I do like to think that this suburb itself is very quiet, but also, very Star Wars-esque. So it was important to me that, yes, Luke does live right next door to this hangar bay, but I have sort of bracketed the hangar bay with rocks. So once you're actually over to Luke's little bit, it does still feel like the isolated desert. I have bracketed it off a little bit. And then you've got obviously Watto's junk shop and Obi-Wan Kenobi, which we made in the last video. He does live in the town. I did have to make that choice, but also Rey is in her AT-AT down the road, and she also is in the deserts of Tatooine. Or Jakku. You know what? I've actually just made the executive decision to combine Jakku and Tatooine, not be taking questions. That's just how it's played out. I'm constantly dealing with space issues within the neighborhood, but unlike the Harry Potter one, this is actually coming together quite well. I'm actually quite pleased with how it's turned out. I don't feel like I'm squeezing anyone in anywhere yet, but keep in mind I'm only about like 25% through the actual whole neighborhood build, so we'll see how it goes, but I'm perfectly happy with how it's going. Of course, it's always important to me to pop in like ships and everything. Making the world feel really alive is absolutely essential for me this time around. With the Harry Potter one, I didn't so much get to make a lot of world building in terms of what we see outside the lots because I didn't have access to the tool mod then, but I've actually been going back and forth on if I do want to go back and do some world building for Harry Potter. And I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to go back and just do some general world building surrounding the lots, you know, make it feel really built in like I'm doing with the Star Wars one. So look out for that video. That's going to be a little bit fun. It's just when I have a moment and I feel like I know exactly what I'm going to do. And I just like the idea that I can still go back and make changes to something that's already been published. Because of course the Harry Potter neighborhood and the Star Wars neighborhood are based in the same save file, so if you get one you get them all, which I think is just my main shtick really. I would like to continue it that way. I don't want to break them up, so completely up to you. But if you want the individual lots, you can always go in the gallery and just download the individual lots. However, you couldn't download the world building I do around the lots, so it's sort of a pick and choose scenario. And then we're going through, and as you can see, I've popped down some speeders on the road. I did make it Australian, so the speeders going one direction are going on the left and the other speeders are going on the right. So it is an Australian traffic particular that we go on the left. And I just did that naturally. I know most of my audience is over in America. Hello. But I just wanted it to do that way. I'm not gonna change that. It would just feel wrong, honestly. I like it the way I like it. If you're wondering what I'm doing here, I really wanted to add in a curved fence because that would just make it look really built in. However, I couldn't get rid of the middle part and I have no idea how to do that. I'm a good builder, but the Sims is testing me right now. So I had to go in and make that look a little bit more natural and built in. So I do go through and add in something a little bit later down the line. And then this moment here where I'm adding in the stairwell down to the hangar bay, it's a very trust the process moment. I had no idea if it was actually going to work or what I was doing. I was just trying. I was trying everything because it was such a long way up and I had no idea how to get it up there. I had a general sense, but thankfully it all really worked out in the end, and we got there and it all looked fantastic and very built in, lots of varied colours, lots of blues, lots of beiges. My God, the beige in this neighbourhood. But yes, I do like how it turned out. Now, another thing that we can be thankful for, the Millennium Falcon exterior, like the actual ship itself that I placed down in the hangar bay, it is actually functional. Happy days. So it was important to me that it was that you could actually, interact with the ship. That was fine. That was a real plus. But the fact that you can go into the Millennium Falcon and you can actually take off in the sky and actually functionally search space and everything like you would as a regular person in The Sims is so cool to me. Like, it's not something I anticipated happening, but it just sort of worked out that way, and I'm so happy. So you do get the best of both worlds. So if you want to go into the ship itself and fly around in space and do whatever, absolutely go forth. But if you want to actually go into the interior, there is a ladder next to the onboarding ramp that goes down into the basement level, and that basement level is where the interior is actually located. So it's not being a big eyesore on top of the land, it's actually just buried underneath, and if you want to interact with it, you absolutely can. It is a dog's breakfast though, because I didn't really put any effort into the outside of the basement. Like, I could have decorated it sort of to try and match it up with what the Millennium Falcon looks like on the exterior, but that's way too much. I'm not doing that. So we're just doing the interior with this, and we're starting with the cockpit, where it's the most iconic place, I feel like, within the interior, because you see this little area so much. I feel like I made it a little bit too big, but it did really turn out really well. I wish I could have made it more grungy, so the themes around the Millennium Falcon is that it's meant to be really worn down. Like, it must have been a really impressive ship in its heyday. However, time has passed since then, and it's probably changed hands a few times before it got to Han. I have not seen the Han movie, sorry, but I feel like that this ship has gone through the ringer and been patched together more times than it can count, and I really wanted to imprint that into the building of the ship. So it's got a lot of mess. Like, it was probably really nice looking at one point, but now it's rusty, it's grungy, it's got stains, it's got bad lighting, and it's really broken down. Like, even the machine room itself has like smoke coming out of it and everything. So it's getting there, but it is, at the end of the day, a well-loved ship. Like, this is Han Solo's baby. He loves this thing more than life itself, so as he really does let us know within the movie. So it was important to me that it is a ship, but it's meant to be Han and Chewie's home. Like, the characters that I actually made for this save file, they live in this Millennium Falcon. Like, they have their bedrooms, their quarters and everything. They have bathrooms and a kitchen. So while it had to be a ship where you can play out the narrative, it also has to be somewhere where the Sims can actually live. So I did go through and I tried to make it as homey as possible, which is a really hard thing to do because it is a spaceship, and I've never made a spaceship before. And it was really just a process of trying to get the colors right, trying to get the textures right, and just sort of popping down as much functional stuff as I possibly could. Like, I sort of had to think, okay, if I pop down these pipes, what do these pipes do? Where do they go? What function do they serve? And then again, it's like all the computers, all the rooms. What does this room do? What does this room do? Now we're moving on to the hallway outside the cockpit now, and this is basically just me experimenting with how I wanted this build to go. So I sort of had to decide on a theme and a color scheme and what objects I was going to use, because that would be the floor plan for the rest of the ship itself. So I decided to go with these floor lights that really just sort of make it. I do change the intensity of the light to be like a yellowish kind of glow rather than a white glow, because the white glow was just a bit too clean, I felt like. And then the rest of the ship is just in this sort of off beige yellow grunginess kind of thing. And I did experiment with like making the ceiling arched, because if you've seen the hallways within the movies, they're not just square hallways, they're actually basically a circle, and you just walk through it. And this is The Sims 4, by the way, so that can't actually happen. So this is me experimenting with making a curved hallway functional within The Sims, and I do feel like I actually succeeded. However, it took a really long time, and it's only really this hallway that I decided to do this design scheme in. It's fun, and I'm glad I did it, but I am never, ever, ever doing this again. Just, it's not happening. It took a really long time, and it looks amazing, but I feel like it also limits the visibility for the person playing it. Like, I had to go into first person view or something to actually see what this hallway looked like, and that's not really the thing I wanted to go, because while my builds, I do want them to be very detailed, I also want them to be accessible for the person playing the build. So I do go back and I don't do this curved thing ever again. It's not happening. No way. So I do just change it up and sort of just stick to a very basic design. I love these metal wall things that I'm popping in because they just lend itself to a really textured, fun look. Like, obviously the hallways of this ship have to be like reinforced with steel because they have to go through space. They have to withstand Star Wars warfare of lasers and everything. So this ship has to be like, you know, sturdy. It has to be sturdy. But I also wanted it to feel like it's going to fall apart at any moment. So steps were taken, and I feel like it does have a little bit of a grungy feel to it, which I'm really happy about. Now, we're coming out to the hallway, the proper hallway this time. It's a whole process, I swear to God. And I skipped over showing you the floor plan because building the floor plan and the walls and everything of this ship took me forever because I could not. I hate circles. I hate circles within The Sims 4. I hate curves within The Sims 4. I don't like doing them. It's so hard. And they don't make it easy on us. So I had to skip through that part because it was just me absolutely struggling for a really long time. I swear, it took me like an hour to build the floor plan of this place, and that's not even without all the decorating. So we're continuing on with the theme now. As you can see, I've got the ladder bit where it actually comes down into the Millennium Falcon. That just had to be random. It had to be where it had to be, and you just sort of have to get used to that. And then the rest of it is, I like to think, very canon accurate in a way. I did look up a lot of floor plans for the Millennium Falcon and tried to make it as faithful as I possibly could. So you've got the curved hallways, you've got the cockpit, you've got the main living area, I like to think, where you have the bar seating thing that Han and Chewie are always on, and they've got like cards and everything. And then I had to sort of get experimental with the areas we never ever see. So like the med bay and the kitchen and a little bit of a lounge room, and then the sleeping quarters and the engine room, and the room where Luke has to, take up lasers and destroy, TIE fighters and everything. And it's a whole thing. So I did have to get experimental with what you don't actually see, and I just sort of had to run with what we see in the movies versus what is displayed and illustrated within the books and fan art of what people have done previously. So I just have to sort of just go forth and hope it turned out well, and I do think it turned out well. You will notice that everything is just super, super textured. It's all about the lighting in these builds. So it was important to me that if this is a spacecraft, it has to go into space, and in space there's no lighting. You've got the sun, and that's it. You've got suns, and the rest is artificial lighting. So the lighting in these builds had to be absolutely perfect because there's not meant to be any kind of natural sunlight in here. And also you have to take into account that this is a spacecraft, and I went very lore heavy with this little bit because I had to sort of consider things about this ship. So how do they heat the Millennium Falcon? Because it's space. It's cold as balls up there. How do they heat it? How do they cool it? What's the engine room like? And, what does what? And how do they navigate? How do they defend themselves? And how do they have fresh water to drink? Where's all their food being stored? And what's their med bay like? Do they have a Bacta tank? I overthought it. I overthought it so badly. But I really like what I was able to get on the page, and I'm so proud of it. Like, you wouldn't think, looking at the build from the street level, that it actually is something like this, and then you actually, go downstairs, and it's a whole thing. So I'm very happy with how it turned out. And we're just moving through, and we're doing the tedious process of popping down everything in this hallway. Like, I wanted it to be 100% like this because it's all about the storytelling, and I wanted it to feel at all times like a Star Wars build. And Star Wars is not lazy in the slightest. So we're popping with the lighting, we're going with that beige lighting, and then we're just popping some decorations in. All right, so we are coming to the room where you've basically got the main living area of the Millennium Falcon. And this is, I think, second on the list of the room you see the most within canon in the movies. So this is the room where Luke does his Jedi training with old Obi-Wan Kenobi for the first time. He's got that little circular thing that shoots lasers at him, and he's very terrible at deflecting them. So baby's first lightsaber over there. And you've basically got the card table and the booth and just something where everyone can sit down and sort of eat and play cards. And it's also, I like to think, also a little bit of a storage area. I like to think anything in this ship is a little bit of a storage area. It's very ramshackle and it's sort of just strewn about and everything. So I tried to be very canon accurate in this room. So as you can see, we're popping down the machinery, we're popping down the booth, we're popping down the archways and the flooring and the walls and everything. And I really, really tried. But if I'll just remind you, I was working with curves. Curves don't work in The Sims, and I really tried. I had to be so select with this floor plan. Like if you can see, I've actually got a gap in the top grating of the room. You can probably see it right there. They don't actually connect all the way. I couldn't fix that because The Sims just would not let me. It was having a moment and it was compromising the whole build. Like if I tried to connect it, it would delete the whole room and I couldn't get it back. So that has to stay, unfortunately. I just think it should just be built into the theme of it. It's a ramshackle ship. It's got a lot of things wrong with it. Yes, the arching over the room is not complete and we're just going to have to live with it. So we're going through and we're just sort of popping in all the arches and everything. And I wanted it to be, it's a very fine balance between industrial and Star Wars futuristic. So futuristic in this instance has to look a bit shiny, a bit modern, and have technology that we don't have yet, but also needs to look like low income futuristic technology. So it's such a fine balance between, this is the future, but this is the future without people without money kind of thing. So it's a little bit steampunk, it's a little bit just put together and thrown together. It's very rusty as well, a lot of metalwork going on, and I think that just lends itself to having it look very used and lived in. I do make sure to pop down a lot of soot and dust, because I just sort of think to myself, if they're visiting planets like Tatooine and everything, dust is going to get all up in that ship. And I can't ever imagine Han Solo or Chewbacca getting out the dustpan and brush or the vacuum cleaner and actually getting all that sand out. So all the floors all throughout the ship are absolutely covered in like dust and sand and everything. And that's just something I've done. And then we move through. Now, getting this table to actually be functional was really, really hard, because for whatever reason, booths in The Sims 4, again, are really, really complicated. It didn't want to work. They just did not want to sit in that booth at that table. Like, they could sit at the booth, but not behind the table. So I really had to fiddle with it when the build was over and just sort of get it correct. And I wanted people to be able to play cards at that table. I can't remember what the card game is called at this moment, but there is a card game within the Journey to Batuu pack, and I do pop that in there. So we're just sort of playing with it and trying to make it functional, because it has to be functional at the end of the day, regardless of everything else. So popping in some exhaust fans, and my strategy for decorating the interior was, if there was something electrical that looked like it fit in that space, I was popping it in. I didn't want to see any plain walls. I wanted it all to be piping and lighting and industrial sort of foundations. And then you can just sort of wonder what those things do. So I think I put down a lot of air conditioners in this place, and a lot of piping, a lot of red lighting. I love the red lighting though. It makes it feel like something is about to go wrong at any moment, and that alarm is going to blare. And I feel like that's very canon accurate. But I do like this room. I put down a lot of exit signs and everything, and it just turned out really, really fun. And I like how it went. Alrighty, so we're moving on to the engine room now. I feel like we see it once we probably see it a few times actually, because something is always going wrong on this ship. They're being attacked by the Empire and they're getting blasters blasted at them. And I feel like this room is always on fire. So I really actually literally wanted to do that. So the engine room had to be this room at the very back of the ship, which I feel like is canon accurate. And it's got ports, it's got wind turbines, it's got stuff. I fully make it red, like I turn the lighting up to red just to make it, a little bit more stressful. I also do this really fun thing where I put a hole in the floor and I make it go down into the foundation so you can actually see into this hole. And I put down chimneys within that hole, and smoke actually escapes that hole. So it's literally like the engine of the Millennium Falcon is on fire. And I put down a little toolkit next to that hole because it felt right, because I have this image in my head of one time when Han Solo was trying to fix the engine and something's happening, they're getting attacked, and a tray of tools fall down into the engine, actually hit him on the head while he's trying to fix the ship. And that's just been ingrained in my head. I didn't even go back and watch the thing. I just went, all right, I'm just going to remember what I remember and just recreate that. So I do go back and the ship is on fire. If you go into the downstairs of the Millennium Falcon, there will be smoke. It's really cool. I really wish I could do an alarm, but I don't think I can. So yeah. And next we're doing the living room. This is one thing that I was actually unsure of if I wanted to do, because you never actually see a living room per se on the Millennium Falcon. It's not something we ever get. They don't have time for that. They're off doing their, scoundrel stuff. So having a TV and a couch is really not anything you ever see, but I really just wanted to put it in. I wanted to blend it into the scenery. So it is there if you want to use it, but you don't have to. And it also just gives them something to do once they're living here. Like, they can't always be running from the Empire or shooting lasers or sleeping or whatever, or going to the bathroom. They have to actually have some functional stuff to do. So I put down a TV, I put down a bookcase, and I think I put down a few other things scattered around the ship, but I did want to make it, at the end of the day, a functional living space. So I just sort of had to blend it in with the absolute crap that was the rest of the ship. And next we're moving on to the kitchen, and up until this point I've done really white kitchens. George Lucas from Star Wars really loves his white kitchens within the Star Wars universe, but with this one I had to make sure that it looked like it had been worn down, there forever, needs to be updated. Futuristic, yes, but also it's a piece of crap. So you've got the exhaust fan, you've got the walls, and while it would have looked really nice at one point, it's got like the beigey counters, and I do go in and I put like mold down and make it look really just not nice. Like, it has gotten flooded at some point and left to rot, so there's mold on the walls, there's a few cracks and everything, and I really just liked how grungy it turned out, because I'm not out here thinking Han Solo and Chewbacca are ever gonna, get the dish rag out and do some dusting and do some mold prevention in their kitchen. So yeah, it's a journey, but it really does blend in with the rest of the ship, which was my aim, and I really liked how it turned out. Next we're moving on to the med bay. I went back and forth on if I wanted to add a med bay, actually, because you never actually see a med bay. I assume there's one on board. They're scrappy enough and daring enough to need a med bay, because honestly, if you're going to go piss off the Empire, then you're actually going to need a med bay, because they're gonna wreck you. So I did actually add one in. It's small. It's beside the kitchen, which I felt was appropriate. Then I went into dynamics of if someone was actually hurt, they need a through line to the med bay really, really fast, because it needs to be sort of close to the central ship, because it's an emergency if someone's actually hurt. But then I'm thinking, no, just put it next to the kitchen. Stop overthinking it. So it is just a lot of me guessing at what future technology around medical care would be. So you've got machines, you've got a little Bacta tank, which is basically just something I feel like you get with the Strangerville pack. But I've just Canon accurate, turned it into a backed tank. And then I used a lot of the get to work items, which you get with the doctor career. So you've got like a examination table, you've got a little desk with lots of little electronic ports on it and everything. There's a lot of buttons everywhere. Very Star Wars, but also it has to be obvious that it is a med bay. So we do try and do that. I also put down a little IV thing and everything. But again, I am just guessing at what future technology would have been. There is probably all this information out there. Like Star Wars has a lot of media that probably goes into all of this in a very in-depth way, but I just did not go back and look for it. I just sort of went on what felt right. So this is just me puddling along and doing what I felt was accurate for the save. And you know what, it's all good. It's all good. It'll work out. So I also do a decontamination shower, which I felt was absolutely essential, because it gets me thinking, like, if they're going to different worlds, what's the germ count on these things? Like, they can't be immunized against every atmosphere in the whole galaxy. Like, healthcare cannot be that good. And I feel like the galaxy itself does not care about their citizens equally. Clearly, the Outer Rim is evidence of this. So what's happening with their immunizations? If they get sick from a foreign planet, what happens? So yeah, I don't like the idea that Bacta or whatever their fancy healthcare system is like, oh no, we've got everything, and it's like, okay, but is that accessible to everybody? I think about these things and I overthink it. Anywho, we're going in. We're actually moving into the quarters of the build now, and again, somewhere we've never seen before. I feel like we have a glimpse of the quarters somewhere. I think Luke, when he's hurt or something, and he's like, oh, why didn't you tell me about my father or something? So I feel like we do get a glimpse of it at one point. And I just went, okay, this ship has to feel really claustrophobic. And I didn't want to make it very vast in terms of quarters. I wanted it at all points to feel a little closed in and claustrophobic. It's not meant to be like a nice place to live. So I do put a lot of effort into making it sort of semi-uncomfortable. But however, the bedding quarters was somewhere where I thought, you know what? Space is miserable enough. Let's try and make it a little bit comfortable, a little bit more personal. So up until this point, the ship has been very generic. There's no personal touches anywhere. It's just messy and old. But the quarters is where I actually put in some character growth. So first off, there's 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. There is not a bathroom anywhere else on the ship because I forgot, genuinely, but I feel like there would be like an ensuite somewhere. Or a powder room or something. Yeah, I can't go back and change it now. Maybe I'll add it onto my list of things to do before the save file tour video at the very end. But they're basically 2 bedrooms with an ensuite each. The bathrooms are pretty much identical. I did put a lot of effort into making them futuristic. So the toilets talk to you. You can have a relationship with the toilet, which I thought was really fun. And you've got decontamination showers, you've got sinks, and it's all meant to look a little bit faded, a little bit white and everything, and lighting also played a really big part. I love the down lighting that I pop in above the shelf. You'll see it in a moment. And I think that just makes the area, because you know, having really dynamic lighting within a space can just make it, and I feel like it does within these Star Wars builds, so lighting is so important. And then for the quarters themselves, you've got, I feel like it's a guest room with a bunk bed where Chewbacca lives. And then you've also got the Master's sort of bedroom area where Han Solo actually sleeps. And so I sort of had to sort of just think to myself, okay, what would these areas look like? So we start off with the guest quarters, and I pop in a bunk bed, I pop in a desk for Chewbacca, and then I just go in and I add some really basic wardrobes and some desks and some postcards, because I feel like they've been everywhere and everywhere, and just sort of trying to add some personal touches to it. These are the lightings that I was talking about. I love these. I'm going to start using them so much. I don't know why I haven't up until this point. Oh, by the way, I love the new bathroom pack. It's perfect for Star Wars. It's like that stonework kind of thing, and you can change the color of the stonework, and it's perfect. It's everything I've ever wanted. It's really good for building as well. The shelves that we get within that pack, mwah, masterpiece. But we're moving into the guest quarters now, and I was asked by a family member previously, what are you going to do about Chewbacca and his height? He's not tall. I couldn't make him tall within the save file. I know he's tall within canon, but you know what? We have to make some sacrifices. And Chewbacca, I've already made Chewbacca. I've released a video previously on him. I love him so much, but he is just the average height for a Sims. So yes, he does have an average height bed, and that's just the way it's going to be. I couldn't do anything else. Like there comes a certain point where my powers of creativity have to hit a wall and I have to just work around stuff and go, you know what? We're just going to move on. So executive decision, Chewbacca is not tall. I'm sorry. But I feel like his bedroom turned out really cool. Even though it is a guest room, he does have just, you know, a little bit of a cool bedroom, and it's got some dynamic space to it and really cool lighting. And yes, it is a bunk bed, but I just feel like bunk beds would absolutely be something Star Wars would do, because when you've got so little space and you have to fit a lot of people into this space, then yeah, absolutely, bunk beds. But yeah, turned out fun. All right, now, Han Solo's room. I wanted to do a very built-in effect, as in he's got this lovely cabinet built-in thing surrounding his bed. So his bedside tables are built in. He's got like this lighting shelf thing behind him, and it all just extends out to the wall behind his bed. His bed is not that nice, but it's, you know, a little bit patchwork. And then you've also just got a little bit of fixtures about, you know, he's got some nice fancy things within his housing quarters. So he's got like a little heater, he's got a wardrobe. And then I really wanted to lean in, okay, what are the hobbies of Han Solo? Because I wanted it to feel like a bachelor's pad. So he's got a mirror, he's got a guitar, he's got some magazines, very, very, very subtle plants. Again, I am holding myself back from placing plants absolutely everywhere because plants would not do well in space. I have to be disciplined about this. I also gave him a punching bag because, you know, he's a scallywag. he has to have his muscles from somewhere. If he's going to have a life of smuggling and crime, then he has to keep himself in shape. And also another thing I gave him was, there's a projection thing you get in The Sims 4 that projects like the night sky or the galaxy in a hologram, and I put that above his bed, and I think that's the absolute sweetest thing I've ever seen. I like it so much because at the end of the day, Han Solo is, I like to think, a little bit of a dreamer in terms of space and the adventures he can have there. It's his, you know, happy place and just being free and hanging out with Chewie and everything. So I feel like seeing a projection of space is something that he would really like, and it just sort of it taps into his more sensitive side. So yeah, but really that is it for the guest quarters, and I really liked how it turned out. Now, last thing of this build is I went in and I actually added in a, oh god, I can't even think what it's called, like a defense room. You know the room where, I'm constantly just going to do this. You know the room where Luke and they're being attacked by the Empire and they have to defend themselves. So Luke actually goes up into this little circular area with a chair and it's got like a gun on the front, and he actually just sort of has to whiz around like he's in an arcade machine and shoot Empire people out of the sky. And he does it so casually because he's Luke Skywalker. I've sort of wanted to give him a room like that, so I do give them a little bit of a room on top of the ship itself. It's where you can sit down at a desk and you've got some, some relevant lighting. You've got some first order guns in there because, again, Han is a smuggler. I feel like he's got his hands on some Empire and first order artillery. And then you've got just a big gun on the front. But really, that is it for the Millennium Falcon. So chuffed with how it turned out. I hope you liked my notes on how I built everything and how it all came together. But I'm really happy with it. I like the dynamics of it. I like that the engine is on fire and the lighting is crappy, and I put way too much thought into what goes into this ship, but I'm really glad I got it done and I'm so proud of it. But I hope you liked it as well. If you liked it, like and subscribe as always. But otherwise, I hope you're having a fantastic day, everybody, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.